Hey guys, this is Trevor. Welcome back to the Patrick Adair Supplies channel. Today we will be going over our Opal sub box. So in this sub box you will be receiving a tungsten liner, our bright sapphire pigment, our blue glow powder, tiger's eye, honeycomb calcite, which is only found in Utah, and malachite. And as a freebie this month, we're giving you some pistachio ice cream opal. So to start off, I am just going to put a small layer of our thick CA on the tungsten liner. And once it's fully covered, I am just going to pour a mixture of our bright sapphire pigment and blue glow on it until it's completely covered it. Once that is all covered and uniform, I will wet it with our super thin CA and put on a little bit of accelerant just to cure it. Once that is cured, I'm taking our materials. For those materials, I made just a little mix where I put an even amount of materials in a vial and shook it up so it's nice and random and makes it look a little more organic. And I'm using the thick CA to hold it in place. When you're doing this, I really like to try and keep all of the materials from hanging off the edge. As you can see me, I'll be constantly pushing it up with the back end of my tweezers. I've found that this is the best way to prevent the super thin CA from leaking off the edge and gluing your ring to the mandrel or to the electrical tape and just making that cleanup process a pain. So as long as you try and keep them from hanging off the edge, that surface tension should help promote it to stay on that liner. Every once in a while you'll get some that'll leak off and you'll have to clean off the electrical tape, but I feel like this has helped me the most with preventing that. So after all of our materials are on, I'm doing just a layer of super thin CA and curing that to hold everything in place. And then probably the longest part of this ring is just going to be building up the ring layer by layer with that super thin. And you really just kind of have to be patient with this part. Just build it up. It really is personal preference for how much you build it up. I like to at least make sure that all the materials are nice and covered, just so that when we're dremeling, it doesn't make any of the materials shoot off. I try to get the super thin in the open spaces close to the materials, close to the top of the materials, as you'll see in the video. There's no set rule on how much super thin you need to add, but I feel like the more you add, as long as it's not super bulky, it makes the shaping process a little bit easier. So once you are satisfied with how much you've built up the ring, it's time to do a bit of a rough shape with our Dremel. The tiger's eye is a pretty hard material, so it will eat through some of your sanding drums. Just take your time, don't get too frustrated. I'm just trying to take off as much material as I can to make the wet sanding process a bit easier. Try and make those edges nice and uniform. You'll see I constantly am switching sides on the ring so that I can try and keep it as uniform as possible. Alright, so once I've dremeled it down a bit, I'm just going to start finishing that shaping process with wet sanding. So for this wet sanding, I'm using 220 grit and 180 grit. I generally don't use 180 unless I do have a hard material like that tiger's eye. So I will just keep shaping this until I get it to that nice domed finish. It doesn't need to be perfect because we're still going to be adding on some super thin in the future, but just a nice kind of rough dome finish is what you're looking for. And before I do put on the next layers of super thin, I will hit it with that 220 grit one last time to try and get rid of any hard lines that the 220 grit may have caused, because that is a harder grit of sandpaper. So once we get our desired shape, I like to add about 3 or more layers of super thin. I find that this helps us get a lot better finish, and it helps prevent materials from poking through. So I'm just going through and building up a little bit once again. I think I do 4 layers here. Alright, so now we are nearing the finish line. So for this part, I'm going to start with 220, and what I'm not applying a ton of pressure. I'm trying to get a uniform kind of matte look throughout the ring. When it's all that kind of matte white color, not that super clear, it helps me know that it is smooth throughout the ring and uniform. So I'm just trying to keep it consistent, trying to prevent any divots from happening. This is what I do with pretty well all of these rings. I just look for that matte finish, and once I know that I have that, then I know that it's time to go on to that next grit. And for the 220, I will switch sides once again to keep it even. But after the 220, I will go through 500 and 1000 and just keep it going, getting that nice shine. You'll see I do add another layer of CEA here. I noticed that there was a small divot that I had missed. And I tried to sand it out, but I was sanding away too much material than I was happy with, so I added one more layer of super thin and started that final sanding process over again. Alright, so now that is cured, and I will just be going through that 220 again, looking for that matte finish. Nice, smooth, consistent matte finish. And then once I'm finished with that 220, I'm just going to go through 500 and 1000, and then I'm going to hit it with our step 1 rough polish. I really like the rough polish because it can get out any kind of fine lines that may have been left over from sanding. And this is not necessary. You can go through with higher grits of sandpaper, 1200 and on, to get a nice shiny finish. But I like the finish that that polish gives, so I will be doing just 500, 1000, and then that finish, that polish. Alright, so now we are applying that polish, and this is really the last step. After this is on, I'm just going to clean the polish off, and you'll see what we end up with. I'm really happy with how this turned out. I think it has a really nice earthy feel. You can see the random placement of the materials in there. I think that really adds to a nice organic look. And with the separation of the sides, you get a nice depth to the ring as well. Well guys, I hope you enjoy making this ring this month. Thank you for watching as always, and don't forget to subscribe. See ya!